Again, back with Treasures of Darkness, the story time with Trish, or should we call them the Perils of Patricia? Anyway, this next chapter is called Roma Street Watch House, and I was there from Thursday the 22nd to Tuesday the 27th of January, 5 nights and 6 days. Stepping down from my metal box, I was directed through a glass door which was in fact one side of a transparent cell. Through the other side I could see, sorry, to put my phone on silent. That was Chelsea, Mum, you'll have to give her a call back maybe. It'll come on. Right, sorry about that. I had arrived at the Brisbane Roma Street. Through the other side, I could see the processing desk, police and watch house staff milling around or tapping at computers. I had arrived at the Brisbane Roma Street watch house. And this time, my expectations were not far wrong. A well-dressed young woman of about 27 sat delicately in the cell. She wore a black suit with a purple blouse, her hair neatly pulled back. She would have passed for a lawyer were it not for her bare feet. My shoes had been removed again too. This beautiful, sad young woman would become a close friend and ally for the next few months. She smiled tremulously. "What are you in for?" So much for keeping to myself. We told each other our respective stories. Amanda had been in 5 years earlier for having a car accident in which someone was badly hurt. I have changed the names of everybody in here. She had been over the legal alcohol limit. Consequently, her driver's licence was suspended for 10 years. This was her 7th year without a licence and without a drink. One slip, and here she was again. Amanda was able to let me know what to expect. "This is the worst it will ever get. It's Thursday, so hopefully we'll be taken out to the proper prison at Wacol before the weekend." "Is that because there's nothing to do here?" I asked. "No, it's because we don't want to be here when they bring in the weekend riffraff." From time to time we watched bedraggled individuals being processed and fingerprinted. Then they disappeared deeper into the intestines of the mysterious building. As we got to know one another, I was moved by Amanda's plight. She was mortified that she'd blown it, and she wept. I got the attention of a police officer who appeared to be part of a group of officers standing around waiting for someone or something, and asked politely for a tissue. He looked at Amanda with an expression of annoyance and said, "Use your sleeve." He turned away to resume his chat. Our status at the bottom of the pile was established. It was Thursday, 22nd of January 2009. We ended up staying for a long weekend because Monday 26th was Australia Day. And my companion was right about the weekend riffraff. Did you know that you are only one bad car accident away from prison yourself? Just take your eyes off the road, something happens, someone gets hurt, you're gone. We want to control our lives, but it's as futile as spitting in the wind. You can have as much asset protection as you like, but your kingdom is still only a house of cards. Any day, any moment, it can be taken away from you. Mine was, but I eventually discovered greater riches. Would you? Or would you wallow in self-pity? If you are a Christian, would you backslide, turn away from God, in anger because things did not go the way you believe they should have? Just a thought. On many occasions leading up to court, the Lord had made it clear that everything would turn out all right. In the back of my mind, I knew that his idea of all right and mine were two different things. But I had to trust him to bring me through whatever was coming. I guess we all do. I did not believe I was being punished by God. Some people thought I was, but I still don't. I was being retrained, given a new experience so that when I spoke into people's lives again, it would be of things that really mattered. I believed that then, and I believe it now. Shall I keep going? All right, back to the watch house. Eventually it was my turn to be processed. To the side of the general processing area were piles of men's clothes, work shorts, t-shirts, tracksuit pants and tops, the kind without zippers. These were referred to as browns because of their colour. After selecting the smallest sizes I could find, I was taken behind a curtain by a female officer. Once again I was strip searched, but this time I had to squat. This is a bit yuck. It's common for women to carry drugs in their bodies. To lighten the moment and minimise my embarrassment, I warned the officer that if anything did come out, it was because I'd given birth to twins and my pelvic floor muscles weren't what they used to be. Yeah, she didn't laugh either. If you're wearing a tampon, you need to pull it out and show me. That's my mum in the background. You'll be given some padded plastic underwear instead. Eek! Fortunately, that wasn't an issue for me that week, and I breathed a silent prayer of thanks. My own clothes, including bra and undies, were taken away. I now wore gappy men's work shorts for underwear. Great. At least they were soft, presumably from their many wears and washes. Dressed in our browns, Amanda and I were issued a thinly woven waffle blanket and a threadbare towel. It was time to go deeper into our dungeon. We were led past computers where the normal-looking people tapped and moved papers around. We passed padded cells that looked frightening, and the padding didn't look soft, more like canvas. On we went through security doors and down corridors, through more security doors and another corridor. At least that's what it felt like. I lost my bearings. We passed glass rooms where tattooed men in brown stood to stare at us. We looked straight ahead, walking until we were ushered into a glass room of our own. The room was rectangular. Its interior wall had 2 glass doors opening into smaller rooms at the rear. The front room contained a TV high on the wall and a metal picnic table with bench seats bolted to the floor. It was a common room that prisoners would share for a few hours a day. To the side was a large metal door I would later learn contained a shower. It was locked. A painted line ran across the inside of the entrance. We were not to cross the painted line. The doorway was to be kept clear at all times. The rooms made up a pod. Our pod consisted of the common room and the 2 glass cells at the rear for sleeping. Some pods were longer and had more cells. Ours was painted a sickly, depressing, institutional green. Some others were painted blue. There were no beds as such. Rather, from each side wall emerged a low platform that would fit a body stretched out. And on each platform and propped against the wall were 3 square vinyl seat cushions, like for a lounge. These would serve as our mattresses. So you'd put the 3, line them up together, and you'd be able to stretch out on them. At the end of one platform, a low wall came out and then sloped diagonally, about so high, sloped diagonally down before dropping to the floor, and it shielded the toilet, but allowed anyone outside to see the user's head and shoulders, and probably their feet if they had long legs. I know, nice. The metal commode had no seat. However, it did have a little sink with a tap and a drinking bubbler built into the cistern at the top. You might have seen something like that when you watch TV of like American jail shows. You sometimes see in the corner that metal toilet with the sink in the top, and there's a little space for the toilet roll to fit in. Right, so the whole pod was filthy. It stank of men's urine the pungent smell telling tales of unhealthy, unclean living. The floor was covered in grit and dirt that gathered in the corners, and we were barefooted, of course. A feeling of darkness crept over me. I considered the various kinds of evil that had stayed here. What demons had taken up residence in this place of misery? Would I be up to the spiritual warfare required? This was where the rubber met the road. I had to live my faith. I thought back to the training in the Spirit our church had been known for in earlier days. How I wished at that moment that I had pursued those things instead of getting caught up in wealth creation. Still, I reminded myself of the Corrie ten Boom story. Corrie had been arrested for helping Jews in Holland during World War II. She was frightened, but then her father asked her, "When you go to the station, when are you given your ticket?" "When we need to use it," she answered. So too with God. He gives us the courage we need when we need it, and not before. I breathed a prayer to the Lord, trusting him to give me courage in that frightful place. The scary part is not when things are moving along. It's when you're settled and have time to think about your surroundings. Turning around, I saw very rough-looking men staring at us from a few feet away. No bars, just transparent reinforced glass separated us. Some of those men would be there for minor offences, but there were also likely to be rapists, child molesters, the violent, and murderers among them. At least that's what went through my mind, and at some point those people would have come through. So there could have been right then. There was also a large pod full of men dressed in white hospital gowns. We quickly deduced they were not even permitted to wear the shorts for underwear. These were mentally defective criminals. What kind of women would join us over the next little while? I would soon find out. I was allowed one phone call. I let my family know where I was and that I was all right. None of us had been able to find out earlier what the process would be. So if you're facing something like that, call me and I'll let you know what happens. Even my own barrister had wrongly said that I would go to the Arthur Gorrie Remand Centre, but I quickly learned Arthur Gorrie is a men's-only prison. His ignorance annoyed me. I wondered what else he was ignorant about that might have helped me. His scope of service stopped at the courtroom and strictly within the allotted billable hours. I'll never know if I would have been better off with legal aid. Justin was not legally obliged to finance my lawyer, but he fought as hard as he could to get me the best advice. Perhaps we should have paid less and trusted God more. Ah well, coulda, shoulda, woulda, didn't. That single 5-minute phone call was extremely difficult. I had practical matters for Justin to deal with. I briefly spoke to my traumatised parents, unfairly insisting they do not fall apart in front of my daughters. Finally, I spoke with my dear little girls who'd had their first day at a new school and didn't understand why I wasn't at home to hear all about it. Okay, this could be a bit hard for me to read. I struggled to keep the tears from my voice. Chelsea was 10 and the twins were 7. Only the grace of God sustained us. In that pod, Amanda and I decided to make the best of things. That meant scrubbing down the cell. We had no equipment, so we wet the cheap, thin squares of toilet paper with water from the bubbler. It was fortunate that we found dregs of soap to rub against our makeshift cleaning rags. So it's, you know, those squares of toilet paper that are about this big and they're folded in half and they're like tissue paper, really, really thin, papery stuff. Yeah, that's what we had. No sorbent in there for us. We soaped all over the basin and toilet cistern, the bowl, the floor, the protrusions of wall we were to sleep on, and wiped over the vinyl cushions. There was nothing else to do, so we wiped down the walls and the glass panels as well. We would not be able to clean the shower until the next day when we were allowed to use it. When we did, we would find it filthy with hair, soap scum and other unidentified but no doubt unhygienic specimens. It irked us that we had no footwear. Using the commode was a challenge. It had no seat and not enough privacy to hover. Ladies know what I'm talking about. We agreed that our scrubbing had to be thorough. Well, I suppose the men, if they're not standing up and they need to do a number two, would possibly hover. I don't know. Anyway, we won't go. Mum's sitting in here listening too, so sorry, Mum. Well, you know, it's not just ladies who would hover. I'll move on. We agreed that our scrubbing had to be thorough enough to allow us to sit. The other person would stand in a place that blocked the view of the men as much as possible. And there was one in particular who each time climbed up onto his pod's table, craning his neck to get a look at us peeing. That was truly creepy. On the second day, I noticed the back of my thighs felt bruised, and I realised it was from the narrow curved metal of the seatless toilet. Yep, great again. Sunburnt, itchy, peeling boob, bruised thighs, and men's loose shorts for underwear. Welcome to your next calling, Trish. Late in the afternoon, we were locked in our inner cell so that dinner could be passed through a little slot within the door. Plastic knives and forks accompanied an airline type of meal with a pineapple juice box. Dire circumstances create an intimate atmosphere, and we were both glad not to be alone. This stranger became a valued friend as we shared our fears and experiences. I had the privilege of introducing her to Christ. We used a scrap of bread from the dinner and the juice for communion. I was able to minister inner healing to the hurts in that lovely young woman's life. She was the first of many I was privileged to pray for in the coming months. Sleep was elusive. I was used to 2 pillows and the comfort of my husband's arms. Instead, we lay on the firm brown vinyl cushions with just the thin waffle blanket. I used my tracksuit top and towel as a makeshift pillow. I prayed for sleep and that I would not wake up with a crick in my neck or a headache. Sleep was broken by torches regularly shining on us and the noises of unruly men. In the morning, we had the surprise of a cooked breakfast. We concluded the caterers also had the contract for an airline as we examined the spoonful of strange-looking scrambled egg, toast, tomato, mini sausage and pineapple juice. We thanked our host politely as we passed our containers and cutlery through the small opening in the door again. We were both from respectable homes after all. Lunch was usually a salad roll and pineapple juice. Dinner was a cold airline packet with the ever-faithful pineapple juice. Those little boxes that you give kids with a little straw that's stuck on the side and you pop in. The meals were tiny and didn't fill me even with my small build. I wondered how some of these large men coped with so little to sustain them. I thought it was just as well they had no calorie-burning activities to do. We wondered if the minimal food was a behaviour management strategy. Less food equals less energy equals less trouble. I ate everything and still lost 5 kilograms. That's about 11 pounds during my stay. In the morning, we were allowed in the common area of the pod. No one was yet in the other inner cell. So we were each issued a disposable plastic cup with a tiny toothbrush in it which had to be screwed together. The teeth were of hard plastic and very short, about 1/4 inch, and sat just in 2 short rows, and a scrap of toothpaste had already been applied for us. Also in a cup was a tiny soap sealed in paper like those you find in a motel. We waited. Eventually we heard a buzz and the heavy metal door that hid the shower cubicle opened. Our good manners were at odds with our surroundings. "Would you like to go first?" "Oh no, you go ahead, I'll wait." "Are you sure? Thanks so much. You go first next time." The power in each kind word was magnified in that unpleasant place. I very quickly saw that as a key to self-preservation. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12:28. When it was my turn, I contemplated that little room. Metal walls with a filthy little metal shelf moulded into the corner, presumably for my towel and clothes. There's no hook there. And some little bumps in the metal floor to prevent slipping. No taps, just a shower rose and a button. I pressed it, expecting cold water to spray me or a tiny trickle to dribble down the wall. I was surprised to have a proper shower until it stopped automatically after 3 minutes. I dried off and dressed in the same shorts and t-shirt that served as underwear and pressed the button to be let out again. Ill-fitting replacements weren't issued until Sunday. It was the only change of clothes we were given in the 6 days we were there. A small rectangle of polished metal was screwed to the wall above our basin to serve as a mirror. It was so high we had to stretch to see a cloudy image of our faces. I don't remember if we were issued a comb. We had nothing for our skin. 6 days without moisturiser in air conditioning takes its toll. By the time I got to the prison, my face was tight and my lips were so badly chapped that pieces of hard, broken skin were standing up like razors. Both sides of my mouth were split. It was Friday, and a new member was introduced to our pod, and I will talk to you about her tomorrow.